TG Wolff here. Today we welcome a new author to our Mysteries to Die For stage, Kay George. Kay writes cozy, traditional, and prehistory mysteries. Her upcoming suspense novel, Someone Is Out There, will be released in early 2025. Hope you enjoy this story from Kay George. Welcome to Mysteries to Die For. I am TG Wolff, and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. All of our stories are structured to challenge you to beat the detective to the solution. These are arrangements, which means instead of word-for-word readings, you get a performance that's meant to be heard. Jack and I perform these live, front to back, no breaks, no fakes, no retakes. This is Season 7, Games People Play. Games are about competition conducted according to rules with participants working toward a goal. Games are a part of every culture and are one of the oldest forms of social interaction and engagement. Games can be fun, challenging, and exhilarating. They can also be intense, cutthroat, and lethal. This season, our authors have fashioned deadly games and unscrupulous villains to test your detection skills. This is episode 19, where that new sensation pickleball is the featured game. This is In a Pickle by Kay George.
Now, dear listeners, what sound shall we pick today to be my piano? I think the choir tab would be fun.
Choir?
Choir. Maybe not that.
No.
No. No. No. No. No. No. We could do do. Ready for some do?
Do does not fit this story.
No?
No, this is about pickleball.
Oh. Well, what instrument do you think about when you say pickles? I think accordion. You know what?
Pickles and pickleball.
Oh, yeah. This is Italian accordion, too. It's got nice bassy undertone. Yeah,
So
we're going to go with an
Italian accordion too. Okay.
I think pickleball's Italian, right?
I do not know.
Well, we'll hope so.
We'll find out
for the
at
sake.
the end where we learn about pickleball.
Oh, so you already know. You're lying to me then. You wrote that.
No, I did, but I wrote it long enough ago that I don't remember.
All right, we'll find out.
Okay. Pock, pock, pock. Harvey Hanover reached for the fat dill pickle on the relish tray. Pock, pock, pock. His headache started again. His whole body tensed, his fingers curled, clutching the pickle. It snapped in two and fell onto the deck. Skitter, the schnauzer, ran over and happily started crunching on it. Damn dog, Harvey muttered, trying to shoo her away. She picked up the pickle and ran down the porch stairs with it. It had been his last one, Harvey's favorite, kosher dill. What was not his favorite was the sound. The incessant sound. Pock, pock, pock. Those pickleballs hitting those pickleball paddles. Harv, sweetie, I'll get some more. I'm going to go out later. His wife, Melanie, was trying to mollify him. He knew. Why did that sound not bother her the way it did him? I'm bringing this up at the town council meeting. You'd better believe it. It hurt to talk. His head ached so powerfully. Again? You've already done that twice. It doesn't do any good. She picked up the relish tray, empty of all but a couple of carrot curls. I got you those ear things. Why don't you use them? He scowled at her as he rubbed his head. Why should I have to go around with those damn headphones on? Just because those people think they can hit that damn ball all hours of the day. Harv, you know they don't start before 8 on weekends. 8? What if I want to sleep in on a Saturday? I deserve to do that. He rose from the glider and stomped into the house. Melanie knew he'd be able to hear the sound of the game from inside, too. It really did pervade their property, outside, inside, upstairs, downstairs. One of the neighbors, one who didn't play the game and shared Harvey's distaste, his abhorrence for the game, had soundproofed a room in his basement. On the weekends, the neighbor, Tony, hid out there most of the day. Maybe she should talk to Harvey about doing something like that. There had to be a solution. They had lived here in their dream house for 20 years now. It was a shame that their tranquility was being shattered by this silly game. Sometimes she looked down on the courts in the park below the bluff where their house was perched and thought she might like to play that game. They were not really old yet. Harvey just retired as early as he could. And the sport didn't seem to take a lot of skill, just some agility, some energy. She certainly had that. She would ask at her next quilting club meeting and find out how many of them played. But then what? Did she dare, seeing how Harvey detested everything about the game? For some time now, she'd been dropping hints about Harvey getting a part-time job. She'd given up on being subtle about him finding a hobby that took him out of the house. It was time to step up her hints, make them broader or more appealing. But she was stymied. What would he like to do? Before his retirement 5 months ago, he'd been the manager of a local auto parts warehouse. It was a full-time job and then some. Well, the way he did it, it was that. He'd had no time for anything else. Being on call weekends and holidays, repair shops were always needing emergency car parts. Melanie did her substitute teaching of art classes, as she'd been doing since the 3rd grade, since the third and last child left the home. She loved getting a call and saving the day. Kids almost always liked art class, so it wasn't like being a sub for a dull English class or a boring math class, where she would have to get the lessons planned and study them herself the night before. No, she had her standard projects and kept the supplies on hand for when she was called in. If the kids weren't in the middle of something that they had a deadline for, she would often sidetrack them with one of her shoebox dioramas. The kids seemed to love doing those. Over the next week, she tried twice to coax Harvey into going down to the park with her to watch the happy people playing the game. Besides the sound of the balls on the paddles, admittedly annoying, happy chatter and bursts of laughter would float up to their house regularly. But he wouldn't budge. No way was he going near those new courts. It had been a mistake to put them in, and the town should know that by now, according to him. An opportunity for her came up unexpectedly. Harvey's former coworker, a man named Alfred, who had retired 2 months before Harv did, had taken up serious bridge. And he called one afternoon and said a tournament was starting that night and his partner was sick with a terrible cold. Could Harvey fill in? "Sure, Al, I can make it. What time and where do you play?" He closed the call. "Hey, Melanie, do you mind if I go out tonight?" "I don't think so," she said. "What was that about?" "Alfred from work. He needs a bridge partner for a tournament that starts tonight. His partner's sick." "But Harv, you don't play bridge, do you?" He nodded, stowing his phone in his pocket. "I played on a team in high school." "You did? I never knew that," she said. "That's quite a while ago." "It'll be like riding a bike. I don't think you can forget how to play bridge." He looked at the clock and said, "I have to be there in an hour." He ran upstairs to change out of his shorts. Skitter scurried up the stairs behind him. Melanie was surprised to learn that he'd been on the bridge team in high school. If she had known about that, she might have suggested it sooner. Maybe this could work for a hobby for him and free up some alone time for her. Maybe even some time for her to try pickleball. "Have fun," she called after him as he went through the garage door to drive to wherever they were playing cards. A reasonable request. When Harvey came home that night, he was keyed up. "Did you have fun?" Melanie asked. "Fun? Did we have fun? We won our bracket. Al says I'm better than the guy he usually plays with." He gave Skitter a gentle pat on the head. It took a whole day before he started complaining about the sound of the pickleballs on paddles again. The next week, Alfred called again. She heard some of the conversation. Harvey sounded alarmed when he said, "Is he still sick?" "Sounds serious." After he got off the call, he told Melanie the guy was on oxygen. "It's not just a cold. They told him he had a bad case of RSV." "I've heard about that," she said. "Don't mostly older people get it?" It's some kind of respiratory virus, right? Well, the guy is old. He's in his 80s. Lives across the street from Al. Harvey hurried up the stairs in jeans and came back down in slacks. Wish me luck, he called as he breezed out of the garage. Apparently, there was a tournament dress code, at least in Harvey's mind. Melanie wasn't sure if she should tell him to break a leg or to actually have good luck. She knew nothing about bridge culture. She'd been learning a little something about pickleball, though. The book she got from the library had laid out the scoring and the rules, but she needed to observe. As soon as Harvey was gone, she leashed Skitter and took her on the path down from the hill of their subdivision to the park, then walked over to the pickleball court directly below their house. It was a gentle, soft evening in June, just perfect for sitting on a wooden bench and watching the two players. One of them called out 4-1 and bounced the little wiffle ball on the court before sending it over the net to the part of the court diagonally across from him. At the end of the volley, the other player served, but with an underhand stroke, calling out the score before he took his turn. Skitter even seemed to follow the ball with her head back and forth. Of course, she probably wanted to chase the ball if she got the chance. Melanie watched for quite a while, but didn't quite understand how sometimes they got points and sometimes they didn't when she thought they should. Studying her book should help some more. If Harvey started playing bridge regularly, maybe she could get into this. Behind his back, of course. Since she wasn't quite sure when he'd return, she cut her viewing short and made her way back to the house. It was a good thing she did, because he drove into the garage less than 10 minutes later. You can't even drive with the windows open. I can hear that racket all the way up the hill to our house. He stomped into the kitchen and flung his car keys into the dish by the garage door. I'm going to shower and get some sleep, if I can. It's kind of early, Harv. How did the game go? He turned and beamed with one foot on the bottom stair. Pretty good. We're going to the finals next week. Al wants to get a couple games in and then go over some strategy. He studies the other players and knows some of their quirks. Well, that sounds wonderful. It really did. He would be gone more often over the next week, and maybe it would become a regular hobby for him. The next night, there was a town council meeting. Melanie had tried to hide the newspaper, but Harvey must have gotten an alert on his phone, or maybe the other neighbor, Tony, with the soundproof basement, had let him know. We need to get dinner over with early so I can make the meeting, he said, mid-afternoon. Oh, Harv, you don't need to go. I do too, he insisted. Another discussion of resident complaints is on the agenda. I have a slot reserved to speak. Okay, I'll fix something simple and go with you. Melanie knew he didn't need her to be there, but what if he really did something stupid and was arrested? She'd never seen violent tendencies in him until this issue started up a few months ago, but they were there now. Tony was scheduled to speak first when it was time for the audience input. Hey, we don't blame the players. They're just having fun. But our houses have been here a long time and some of us have put a lot of money into them. My house is fixed up just the way I want it, and I can't find another one like it, just like that. He snapped his fingers. Harvey nodded his head like a bobblehead doll. Tony continued. We just want the hours to be shorter so we can enjoy peace and quiet at home. Just consider that, please. He sat down and the town council member motioned that it had been discussed and they felt the hours were reasonable. The chair recognizes Mr. Harvey Hanover. You have 3 minutes. Harvey stumbled in his haste to move down the aisle to the microphone stand in the front and started right in. So there's nothing you can do? Nothing at all? He came across as belligerent. Melanie saw 2 policemen who'd been leaning against the wall at the side of the room come to attention and stand upright. The one looked near retirement age, but the other one caught her eye. He wasn't bad looking at all. Harvey didn't seem to notice. It's the only thing you can do, and now you've built these damn courts, and the only thing you can do is to limit the hours. We know you can't put a soundproof fence up because our houses are straight up the hill from the damn courts. You can't put a ceiling on the park. Hell, you should try to sleep in on Saturday at my house or read a book on my back deck. You damn well can't do it. Try it. You'll see. His volume had steadily risen, and his last two sentences were shouted, his face red and his head trembling. "Your time is up, Mr. Hanover. Please take your seat." "I haven't even had 3 minutes. Don't give me that. Put this to a vote. I dare you." Then it happened. The attending law officers were asked to escort Harvey from the premise. He went with them, but shouted and struggled against their hold all the way out the door. Melanie was shocked. Now what? She would have to leave and take him home. They had driven to the town hall together. After heads turned toward the front again for the next item on the agenda, she ducked out the back door. She hoped no one noticed her. This was embarrassing. Harvey stood by the car, the two police close by, but no longer holding him. A knot of young men nearby whispered and smirked at Harvey. Were they pickleball players? Melanie had the car key fob, so she beeped the locks open on her way. They both got in, and she drove out of the parking lot as carefully as possible, not wanting to give the police any ammunition. Harvey had no such concerns. "Those animals! I'll be bruised tomorrow. You watch." "Darling, they're just doing their job. You didn't have to resist like you did. If you just walked out, they wouldn't have touched you." "The hell they wouldn't. They get their kicks doing stuff like that to people." She knew there was no reasoning with them, and she had to admit she was surprised. He had never reacted this violently to anything in all the years she'd known him. Sure, he got angry sometimes, but not irrational. Not like this. "Would you like to stop somewhere for dessert?" she asked. "No," he snapped. "I need to get home." Making her way sedately up the road to the house, Melanie noticed two cars following close behind. Very close. They drove past when she turned into the driveway, though. She couldn't be sure, but the young, sneering men might have been in them. What do you think?
The wife dies. Sorry, I'm trying to guess who dies
Now
now.
you're betting on who dies.
Who dies? It's got to be... Look, Harvey's too obvious. Melanie's got to go.
You know, your dad and I play that game when we watch Columbus. Because, in
Who
Columbus,
dies?
you always know who did it, but you don't always know who dies. It's like, that guy's going to die. That guy. If you can't pick who did it, you pick who's going to die.
Got to gamble on something. Alrighty.
All right.
Well, let's find a new chord progression.
Oh. Are we still sticking with the Italian accordion, too?
No. We'll go back to E piano.
Oh.
Let's try 60s.
I guess it does sound like the entrance to a 60s sitcom.
Oh, yeah. Back to Columbo.
All right. Playing partners. As soon as Harvey was in the house, he headed for the cupboard in the den where he kept a few bottles, grabbed the whiskey in a glass, and poured himself a tall glassful, neat. He gulped it down and poured another. Melanie had never seen him drink like that. Disgusted, she left the den and started watching the small television in the kitchen, sitting at the counter with a bowl of ice cream. The bedroom was tense that night. Harvey never did apologize for his behavior at the council meeting or for embarrassing her. Things were frosty between them. In the morning, the front window had something written on it in very big letters. Harvey shouted them out when he saw them. The words were extremely coarse. Melanie reported the vandalism and had to pay someone to clean the paint off the window and the house, but nothing came of it. There was probably no way to tell who had done it, but she remembered the young men who had possibly followed them home from the meeting. The next week, Tony's house got the same treatment. Harvey went over to commiserate, but Tony turned on him and said it was his fault for stirring everyone up at that meeting. Melanie heard them from her house and ran down to see what was happening. "Just get off my property," Tony shouted. "Just stay away. Come here again and I'll shoot you." Back home, Melanie wasn't able to soothe Harvey one little bit. Only Skitter, curling up in his lap, finally calmed him down. Soon, Harvey was leaving every weekday evening to either play or practice bridge. Some nights he came home relatively sober. Some nights he'd had quite a few. At least there was no more paint vandalism. Meanwhile, Melanie was taking advantage of her free time and learning pickleball, the details, the scoring, the serving, and the ins and outs. She got fairly good at remembering that she could only score when it was her serve, and also to serve from alternating sides, but sometimes she forgot and heard her opponent shout, "Fault!" She would grin good-naturedly, shrug, and continue playing. The better she got, the more she enjoyed the game. The sounds of the balls on the paddles was comforting in a strange way. With things still bad between her and Harvey, she took satisfaction in creating the sound that annoyed him so much. After a couple weeks, she was surprised to see a familiar face show up at the pickleball court. "Thanks, Julie. See you later," he called as he climbed out of the car. It was one of the policemen who had escorted Harvey out of the town council meeting, the cute one. She had suspected, seeing him in uniform, but how she could now confirm, seeing him in shorts, that he had a rock-solid body under that pleasant face, with such deep dimples at the slightest smile. It wasn't hard to wrangle a game as his partner, since he was alone, having been dropped off by a pretty young Julie. "Hey, happy to pair with you. My name's Kai. What's yours?" When she told him, he answered, "Well, that's an unusual name. Family name?" She smiled at the familiar comment. "No, just a whim of my mother, I think. Which side do you want first?" Since there was no indication that he remembered her from the meeting, he might not even have seen her that night, since he hadn't given his last name and she wouldn't give hers either. He was fairly new to the game, but athletic enough to catch on quickly and be a great player. They each had their own paddles and balls, but they started out with one of his balls. He was quite a bit younger than Melanie, which was exciting for her. She considered herself in pretty good shape, but he was more than willing to spend time with her. "This is different," she said, looking at his bright green ball after she missed and picked it up. "Why does it have these tiny holes?" "Did you buy the other kind?" he asked. "The ones with the 26 bigger holes are really for indoors, but we can use them outside too." She had bought pink ones, on a whim. Somehow, playing this sport made her feel more feminine than she had in a long time. They played together every few nights. He sometimes drove himself, and he sometimes was dropped off by the attractive young woman. Melanie decided she would assume the woman was his sister. Eventually, they had each other's balls in their bag. Hers were half bright green, and his included some pink ones. She loved the intimate feel that gave her. She also loved that a younger man was interested in spending time with her. One night, they were told that the tournament sheet was being drawn up for next week. He asked, "Do you want to partner with me for the tournament?" "Sure," she answered quickly. "I love playing with you." They went together to look at the same grid when it hung in the clubhouse. Melanie was horrified to see her full name was there. Melanie Hanover. Would Kai recognize it? They had never talked about their jobs or anything outside of pickleball to anyone, even when they were having drinks after a game. Hanover. He looked at her. "I've heard that name somewhere." "Oh, there's a few of us around here." Melanie hadn't ever worn her wedding ring to play and wasn't sure why. Maybe she had thought it would interfere with her paddles, but it couldn't because the paddle was always in her right hand. Since she had met Kai, she was glad she didn't wear it. He didn't have one on either. He might have left it at home, or he might be single. She hadn't asked, and neither had he. There was something not too long ago with that name. He wasn't letting it go. "Should we get some practice in before I have to go?" She needed to distract him from remembering hauling her husband out of the meeting. As far as Kai was concerned, she didn't even know he was a cop, since he never mentioned it. They played a singles game opposite each other, as they sometimes did for practice. She kept thinking about how nice and private Kai was, reticent and quiet, unlike Harvey, who blustered about things that irritated him and yelled when his football team won a game on TV. Kai was the proverbial strong, silent type. He would be tall, dark, and handsome if he hadn't had blonde hair, but he had those other two nailed, tall and handsome. Some talk drifted across the court and into the clubhouse about a maniac who was trying to sabotage the courts. Was that Tony, the neighbor who shared Harvey's hatred of the sport? Or could it be Harvey? There were a few times when she came home in her gym clothes after Harvey got back. The first time, she thought fast and told him she joined a gym and had been for a workout. She left the paddle and her bag in the car when she saw his in the garage. Saying that she joined a gym was a good subterfuge because Harvey would never do that and wouldn't ever be tempted to join her there at the mythical gym. He was anti-exercise. The only reason he wasn't a little bit more overweight was purely genetics. His family all tended to be slim. However, she finally made a big mistake. Fault. As Melanie and Kai became closer and closer, they both wanted more, naturally. They tried a motel, but Melanie felt dirty after doing that, and she was also afraid that Harvey might drive past and see her car unless they picked one awfully far away. By this time, they both knew more about each other. Kai had told her that he was a cop, and she told him that she was married and separated. Not quite true, although there wasn't much going on in the home bedroom. He said he lived with 2 other officers, so it was hard to use his place, although he never took her there. She could imagine what a bachelor pad of cops might look like. He also knew she taught art and was an artist herself, of course, as most art teachers are. When he said he'd love to come see some of her work, well, that seemed to be a sign that they should use the house. It was Sunday, a few weeks after Harvey had gotten very serious about bridge. She and Harvey had gotten up late and were having breakfast around noon. "Do you have a tournament tonight, Harv?" "Don't you remember? We're playing in Dover," he said. "I'm staying the night. Hell, my suitcase is on the bed." She did know, she just had to make sure. "Oh, right. I'm feeling a little off today, kind of woozy." He nodded. "Well, that's okay. I can drive myself to the airport." Melanie liked the sound of that. "When's your flight?" He held up his car keys. "I have to leave now, in a few minutes. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Wish me luck." "Okay, good luck. I hope you win." She gave him a peck on the cheek as he rushed out to the garage with a suitcase. Melanie couldn't help the huge smile that spread across her face. Kai could spend the whole night, and they could dawdle over breakfast. It would be a sweet, special time. Standing at the front window, she made sure Harvey's car disappeared before she called Kai. "I have to work another half hour, babe. I'll be there as soon as I can." "Perfect," she said. "See you then." Harvey had taken most of his everyday toiletries with him, but she cleared a few remaining bits from the top of the sink counter and made sure none of his clothes were lying about. The ones in the closet could be explained. She separated from her husband and just hadn't taken everything out of it yet. She also slipped into one of the negligees she used to wear for Harvey. He'd stopped commenting on them a couple of years ago, so she quit bothering. Forcing herself not to stand at the window or in the doorway, she waited until she heard a car pull up. Then she rushed to the door and greeted Kai with one of the most passionate kisses they'd ever had. "Come on," she said, tugging his hand toward the staircase to the upstairs bedroom. They were moving slowly, languidly, and had made it about 6 steps up, stopping for another embrace, when she heard the garage door go up. Kai jerked his head in that direction. "What's that?" The door into the house was in the kitchen, which was directly behind the entry hall where the suitcase was. I can't imagine. Wait here." Melanie ran to the kitchen, realizing she was in a skimpy gown, but she couldn't do anything about that now. Sure enough, Harvey came through the door. "What happened?" she whispered. "Damnation! You wouldn't believe. I gotta go wash up." He had some sort of goo in his hair, dripping down onto the nicest shirt he had worn for his flight. He was so agitated he didn't seem to notice what she was wearing, and what she wasn't. Wait, she ordered. "You can wash up here in the kitchen." She had no idea how to handle this, but it was out of her hands when Kai walked into the kitchen. "Who the hell is he?" Harvey snarled, moving toward him. "I know who the hell you are," Kai barked. "You're the jerk I threw out of the town council meeting." Harvey stopped, drew his head back and his eyes widened. "You're coming to arrest me?" Kai narrowed his eyes at Harvey, then at Melanie. "You're not separated, are you?" Her heart raced. "Well, I can explain." Now both men were glaring at her. No, she could not explain. She ran up the stairs and locked herself in the master bedroom. Not knowing what to expect, she stayed quiet, trying to hear what was going on below her. The first thing she heard was the front door open and close. Then Kai's car started up and left. That, she assumed, was the end of that. Pickleball was over for her. But what was going on with Harvey? Had someone thrown an egg at him? What's this stuff in his hair? Why did he not fly to Dover for the tournament? He'd been looking forward to it so much. The next sounds were of Harvey trudging up the carpeted stairs and coming into the bedroom. Melanie, where are you? Now what? She threw on her robe, burst out of the bathroom, and took hold of his shoulders. Harvey, what happened? What is all this? She touched the goo. Yes, it felt like raw egg. I haven't been honest with you. He sat on the edge of the bed. He hadn't been honest? She ran to get a bunch of towels and put it around him so the egg didn't get on the sheets. The bed was turned down in anticipation of what she thought would happen, and now never would. While Harvey gazed at the floor, dejected, Melanie drew her fluffy robe more tightly around her to hide the incriminating outfit. Honest about what? Okay, some days I was playing bridge. He hesitated and then said, but sometimes I wasn't. Was he having an affair too? Had a husband egged him? When he remained silent, she prompted him. What have you been up to? What have you been doing? We only play 3 times a week. The other days, I've been trying to convince the pickleball fans to give it up. She wasn't understanding what he was saying. What do you mean? You've been at the pickleball court? How had he not seen her? A pickleball court. Not this one, he said. It'd be too obvious. Too close to our house. I didn't want them to know where I lived in case I got caught. I cut the nets sometimes. Sometimes I smeared stuff on the court. Oil and stuff. She gasped. How could you do that? How could I do that so they all quit playing and leave me in peace? His expression grew ugly. Nothing else is gonna work. After a moment of silence, when he still didn't mention her outfit or the presence of Kai, she asked what happened to him just now. They must have been following me, and they got me at the airport parking lot today. The pickleballers. They were there yelling at me and throwing things, saying I should be dead. Eggs? She had been right. It was eggs on him. Yes, and other things. See this? He pointed to a cut above his eyebrow that she hadn't noticed. They threw the petals at me. Wow. She sat beside him and wiped a bit of the blood from the cut with a tissue. She had heard a bit about this, but hadn't paid too much attention. Maybe because her focus was on Kai. So, what was that cop doing here? The end of the game. Melanie certainly wasn't going to tell him what Kai was really doing at the house. I'm not sure. What did he say to you after I went upstairs? Not much, Harvey said. Just something about how he understood something and then he left. I thought he might have been here to arrest me. Maybe Kai would arrest Harvey another time for the damage he'd been doing, but right now she wondered how angry Kai was at her. If she left Harvey, could they get together? But if she left Harvey, what would she do? She lived on his very generous pension and in his very nice house. She and Kai were probably over. She left messages on Kai's cell the next few days. Her texts were ignored. She had to know, though. She knew how stupid it was, but one night she was waiting in the parking lot of the police station, watching for his car to show up. He sometimes worked shifts starting in the late afternoon, so she waited there for several days in a row until she saw him drive in. As he got out of his car, she made it there as fast as she could, running across the parking lot. Kai, we need to talk. He didn't say anything. I know, there's a lot I didn't tell you. We aren't officially separated yet, but there's nothing between us. He kept staring at her. Could he tell that she was fibbing? Just a white lie, but a lie. Could cops do that? Detect lies? I don't think I could do without you, she said. And that part really wasn't a lie. It shocked her when he grabbed her and held her tight and put his lips on her, hard. "You need to know. I'm not divorced either. We'll talk later. I can't do without you either." He walked off. Stunned, she watched his broad back disappear into the station. Somehow, she stayed upright, then slowly walked back to her own car, catching her breath on the way, and trying to figure out what was going on. Men, how can anyone understand them, she thought. Feeling goosebumps on the back of her neck, she turned and saw the good-looking woman standing next to the car a row away, her eyes drilling into Melanie with intense malevolence. She wore a stylish, bright red scarf around her neck. Shivering, Melanie ducked into her car and took 2 deep breaths before driving off. That was probably, she thought, the woman Kai was not divorced from, the one who sometimes dropped him off at the court, the one who was not his sister, the one he had called Julie. Needing to recover and ponder, Melanie drove around for a bit. She went to one of the pickleball courts across town and sat in her car watching people play under the lights. They were all having such a good time. The servers called out the familiar scores and she watched them carefully serve to one side and then the other, except when they forgot, like she sometimes did, and a fault was called and the other side took a turn. A few tears ran down her face. She let them go and drop onto her shirt. She wasn't dressed to play, but she wasn't dressed up either, although she had considering doing that to see Kai. He still loved her. Would they be able to get back together? Could she leave Harvey for good and live with Kai after they both got divorces? Eventually, she drove to the court below her own house, hers and Harvey's. Happy people were playing there too, having a great time, laughing and running around after a little ball, thwacking it over and over, making that sound that drove Harvey nuts. Okay, it was time. She drove up the hill and put her car in the garage. "Harvey," she called. No answer. She went through the kitchen and the dining room. The house was still, but Skidder was whining somewhere. When she came to the home office, Harvey was lying on the floor in an awkward position, facing up, but his leg twisted beneath him. "Harvey, what are you doing?" He lay, perfectly still. Then she noticed that his eyes were open. She touched his hand and it wasn't very warm. His mouth was gaping wide and there was something pink inside it. More importantly, there was a hole in the center of his chest and blood was seeping out from beneath him. He was dead. Skidder sat beside him, whining. Melanie had to grab a chair and collapse into it for a bit. Then she dialed 911. "My husband's been shot. He's dead." "Ma'am, are you sure he's dead? Is the shooter there?" Was the shooter here? There were no cars in front. "Yes, no one is here. Please send someone." As she waited in the kitchen to hear the sirens coming up the hill, Melanie had an awful thought. Would they think she killed him? She went back to the office. She opened the safe and saw that Harvey's gun was still there. Was he trying to get to it when he died? The pounding on the door made her slam the safe closed and run to answer it. Skidder curled up in her lap after the police took Melanie out to the deck to get her statement. Later, she couldn't even remember what she said, except that she had driven to several places. She left out the police station. Was that a mistake? Kai was not one of the officers who answered the call. The woman officer who'd been talking to her rose, but Melanie stopped her. "Wait, you asked me who would want my husband dead? I think there are some, actually." She told them about the town council and the vandalism, which they would be able to verify, and about Harvey's quarrel with Tony and the assault at the airport. But she couldn't tell her who the young men were and couldn't give much of a description, having seen them only the one time outside the town hall. She mentioned the rumors about the pickleball courts and clubhouse without saying Harvey had been doing the vandalism. Afterward, she had to wonder, would Kai want her husband dead? She had never seen him display violence, but he had to in his job. After the police processed the scene, she packed a bag and took Skidder to a pet-friendly hotel for the night. The next day, they permitted her to return home. She roamed the rooms for hours, Skitter sticking very close, occasionally whining. They had told her that there was no sign of forced entries, so Harvey had let the person or persons in, and Skitter was there when Harvey was shot. There had been no indication that Skitter had bitten anyone. Who would Harvey let in the house, and why was he back in the office? Had he let someone in and later realized there was a threat? As the days went by, it was clear to her that the police thought Melanie had killed her husband. She was brought in for questioning multiple times. She was told that a pink pickleball had been jammed into his mouth. That was the color she had seen. A chill came over her when she realized she had never seen anyone else use a pink ball, only herself. Had someone framed her, or just found one of her balls and stuffed it in there? She had to figure out who had killed him. The questioning was getting more and more hostile. She called a lawyer and had him with her for one more session. Then she quit being called in. She hung around the pickleball court to see if she could identify any of the young vandals. Would anyone on the town council harbor the amount of animosity for what was basically a nuisance to them? Had the killing been done to frame her? The pink ball indicated that. Who hated her enough to do it? The killer had taken the weapon away. That wasn't a very good frame job. The morning after, Melanie was back in the house. Skitter dragged a piece of cloth out of her doggy bed, which was filled with old blankets and dog toys. This was different, though. It was bright red and silk. It didn't belong to Melanie. Had she ever seen it before? She laid it up on the kitchen counter, not touching it after initially picking it up. Maybe it contained the DNA of the owner. She went to Skitter's dog bed and rooted around. She found 3 shriveled dill pickles, a pink pickleball, and nothing else interesting. After she called the police about finding the scarf, she sat looking at it. Was it a woman's scarf? Probably. It wasn't warm enough for anyone to need one, so it was probably worn as part of an outfit, worn for style. Where had she seen it recently? Wandering back into the kitchen, before the police showed up, she got goosebumps on her nape looking at the scarf. Then she knew. The pretty woman, Julie, Kai's wife. Harvey would open the door to a woman. He wouldn't think a woman would be a threat. She must have become one, and he tried to get his gun out of the safe. That hadn't worked out well for him. Then, when she gave the scarf to the police, they took DNA from it and were eventually able to match it to Kai's wife, as Melanie had suggested. It made sense, Melanie thought. The woman had been jealous of the time he'd been spending with her and had even taken one of Melanie's pickleballs from the gym bag to stick into Harvey's mouth after she shot him. But would Julie leave her scarf here after shooting Harvey? All right, Jack, we're at the deliberation.
Dude, no clue. Every time I was like, oh, I know that, they were like, it was this person. And I was like, oh, well, if they hadn't told me, I would have said it was them. But they told me. Crap.
Well, before I provide you with the summary, I want to remind everybody that Mysteries to Die For remains ad-free. In exchange for not making you move to hit the fast forward button, support our authors by checking out their backlist and picking out a title. Again, this week's author is K. George. Some really awesome stuff here. I think this is the first one we have where the murder came right before the deliberation instead of in the first section or two.
Plus, I don't remember. Have I gotten any wrong this season? I've gotten 1 or 2.
Yes. Let's see. The last time I updated it, you were 12 wins and 5 losses.
5 seems like a lot. I was on a streak there. That's how I built up to 12. I'm not sure about 5. I'm going to have to go re-listen to those.
I don't... Well, at one point I was giving you credit for half guesses because, you know, when you're a mystery reader, that's what it is. If you get the right person, even if you get the wrong motive, that
I know
counts.
the one time I thought it was more than one person, so I guess 2, and only one of them was the killer.
I probably gave you credit for that.
Yeah, I think you gave me half point. Yeah, this one's really got me. It's pointing to either Kai or Julie.
Okay. So let me read you the summary.
My
so you
bad.
got it.
I forgot.
So Melanie Hanover is in a real pickle. Her cantankerous husband Harvey is dead, and a pink ball points back to her. We know she didn't do it, so no gaming that. It was not Melanie.
Darn.
Okay. So let's give her our help to find the pickle in the middle of all of this. Yes, there's a lot of pickle puns. Here are the suspects in the order that we met them. Okay. So we have Tony, the pickleball hating neighbor who threatened to shoot Harvey.
Sure.
The town councilman, the people who hated listening to Harvey nearly as much as Melanie.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I've been saying her name wrong the whole time. It's Melaine.
I was wondering, I was like, Melanie? That's a pretty normal name.
I am so sorry, Kay. I just noticed it as I was reading it that it does not say Melanie. But now I've called her Melanie for the entire podcast, so we're going to have to stay with Melanie.
You know, she probably named that after, like, a very valuable person in her life, and you just totally disrespected that person.
I did not mean to be disrespectful. My eyes read what they wanted to read.
You deserve a full refund. Not that you paid to do this, but still.
I'm sorry, Kay. The anonymous pickleballers, the people who are opposed to Harvey's opposition.
Yes.
Kai, the cop who is Melanie's lover.
No, Melaine. It's got to be Melaine.
Melaine's lover.
We have to make up for it.
Okay, Melaine's lover.
Uh-huh.
And the pretty woman, Julie, who is something to Kai.
Something.
All right, here's what Melaine knows.
Okay.
Harvey hated pickleball and everyone who played it.
Uh-huh.
He was making it his mission in retirement to run the sport out of town by sabotaging pickleball courts.
What an old fart.
Two young men, anonymous pickleballers, knew what Harvey was up to, and they followed Harvey and Melaine home from the council meeting.
Okay.
Harvey's and Tony's houses were vandalized with the windows painted, like a week or two apart. The anonymous pickleballers are suspected. Tony blamed Harvey for stirring up the trouble and threatened to shoot him if he came onto his property.
He did do everything very peacefully, and then Harvey went up and went, no! And then, ruined the whole vibe.
So Kai was one of the cops who escorted Harvey out of the council meeting. Melaine and Kai were starting an affair. Harvey didn't seem to realize what his wife was doing. A pretty woman, suspected of being Kai's wife, seemed to lurk in the background.
Interesting.
Melaine and Kai admitted that they want to be together and agreed to talk later. The pretty women saw them talk.
Ha-ha.
Harvey was found in the office of his house, shot in the chest. One of Melaine's pickleballs was shoved in his mouth. He had let his killer into the house. His dog, Skitter, was the only witness.
It's Skitter now.
All right, Melaine is at the line. To whom should justice be served?
Okay, let's go down the line. Here's the thing. It was definitely Melaine. It had to have been.
I told you that it was not her.
And I don't believe you.
She is not on the suspect list.
But Skitter...
You can see my notes. Melaine's name is not there. We have Tony. We had the town councilman, the anonymous pickleballers, Kai, and Julie, the pretty woman.
Out of all those people, the only person that Skitter had met, technically, was maybe Tony and Kai. When, Kai came into their house.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the only two people who maybe wouldn't have been attacked if they came in and, killed Harvey.
Okay.
Right?
So what are you doing with that?
So, well, it's not Tony because Tony's just a suspect to be a suspect. And if it is Tony, then you and I, Kay, will have a good talking, okay? Okay? None of this Agatha Christie bullshit today. I'm not doing it. The girlfriend, it could be. Everything seems to want to point towards her, but the thing is that Skitter wouldn't let her do that. We don't know for sure that, I guess in one way or another, she could have found out where they lived and gotten in. Yes, she maybe would have just been let in by Harvey, but, Skitter still would have, he said it in the book, and not in the book. In the story, Skitter would have, been pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe been scared from the gunshot, but did we really think about that while writing this? I'm hoping not. It helps me game it better. Just the groups of people that it could have been makes you want to say, no, it's too vague. Do I really want to say, it was people who vandalized the house? What do we know about them? That they're angry.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Well, they'd know where they live, but again, Skitter would have been mad then.
Mm-hmm.
The Skitter is what brings it all together.
Skitter's the key for you.
Yeah, and then you have the pink golf ball and the scarf, both of which...
Pickleball, but yeah.
My bad. That's on me. I completely ignored the whole point of this episode. We have the pink pickleball and the scarf, which could be obtained by either of the two. But where did they say that the scarf was found again?
In Skitter's doggy bed.
In Skitter's doggy bed. Did it explain how it got there?
No, because Mullane doesn't know.
Mullane doesn't know. So if it had been there somehow mysteriously, and we really want to game it, we could say, oh, well, Julie put it there so that the dog would be used to her scent. It wouldn't go crazy when something like that happened. But is it Julie or is it Kai? Darn it, I'm not going to get a full point. It's a 50-50 shot. I want to say Kai for the sole purpose of we know him better, and I just want to pick the person we know better.
So I'm coloring Kai green?
No, because,
Okay.
still, then,
Okay.
How did it get there? We'll say it was Julie.
Julie. So I'm coloring Julie green.
Okay, if you're the reason that I lose my streak, congrats, but also I'm not happy about that. And there better be a real reason why it's one of them, okay?
Are you locking in on Julie?
There's a clue I must be missing. There must be one I'm missing. Whatever. Yeah, I'm locking in. We have to keep going. The show must go on. I can't contemplate for days.
A reminder to mystery readers to check out our print and ebooks. This season's book is being released in 2 parts. Part 1, Opening Gambit, came out in March of 2024. And Part 2, Final Move, in September. Buy one for yourself and one for a mystery lover you love. The dimes and quarters from the book sales do support the podcast and keep Jack in apple cider. And now, 11 points. Game over. Eventually, Mullane was told the gun Harvey had been shot with had been traced back to Kai. Then things got confusing. After that, she waited to see who would be arrested, Kai or his wife, just like Jack. At least Mullane was off the hook, but it seemed that Kai was too distraught by everything to see her. Maybe he would come around someday if he wasn't convicted. Kai's wife was arrested and charged and eventually convicted, though she protested loudly that her husband had done it. The prosecution argued that she used her husband's gun to frame him and stuffed the pink ball in Harvey's mouth to also implicate Mullane because of their affair. Kai moved in with Mullane after the trial. At first, the only problem was Skitter. She seemed afraid of Kai and even growled at him a few times.
No, I was wrong. You asshole, Kay. I was doing so damn good. Okay, you're not an asshole, but I'm sorry. I regret saying that.
At least he takes losing with grace. Kai moved in with Mullane after the trial. At first, the only problem was Skitter. She seemed afraid of Kai and even growled at him a few times. That made Mullane wonder if Kai had framed his wife instead of the other way around. No, she told herself, that was ridiculous. Soon, though, Kai got a big promotion and was home less and less. When he did show up at night, he was always tired. They quit playing pickleball, not having the time to work it in. Then, after he started saying the sounds from the court were giving him a headache, they split up and he moved out. Both she and Skitter were glad to see him leave by that time. Skitter had never warmed to Kai, never letting him approach any closer than 6 feet or so. Mullane trusted the dog's instincts. By the time Kai moved out, she was sure he had killed Harvey and framed his own wife. Mullane started visiting Julia and working on getting evidence against Kai. Together, they engaged a lawyer and a good PI. One day, when Mullane decided it was time to wash all the dog blankets in Skitter's bed, she saw something that was stuck in the wall just above it. Something small and metal. A bullet. It must have been the one that missed Harvey. The PI matched the prints on it to one of Kai's pickleballs that she still had, and the case was reopened. It wasn't long before a trial date was set. After Julia was released, Melaine had her over and was pleased to see that Skitter took to her right away. This cemented her suspicions, as did the guilty verdict, much later, for Kai. Meanwhile, Melaine returned to the courts below her house and started playing again. She didn't like living alone, and there were several candidates for a future partner. The end. You were on the right track with Skitter.
Yeah, I was. But there had never been any indication up until that point that Skitter liked one over the other.
No, you're right. I guess the only indication was that, like you had said, that Kai had been in the house.
Yeah, which, again, that's just me overthinking it. You know, if you overthink it too much, you have to wonder, did the writer take that into account, or are you just making up shit? And I just made up shit.
Would you like to learn about pickleball?
I would love to. It's very popular at Ball State right now.
Is it? You know, I've much like Melaine, I've thought about trying it, but I don't know how to get started.
It's weird because it's a bunch of young people have just decided, you know what, let's do this. And no one really knows why.
Well, pickleball is a racket or paddle sport in which 2 players or 4 players hit a perforated hollow plastic ball with paddles over a 34-inch high net until one side is unable to return the ball or commits a rule infraction. Pickleball is played indoors and outdoors. It was invented, guess what year it was invented? Just guess what decade?
The decade?
Yeah, so like, 40s, 50s, 60s, 90s.
I was going to say 90s, but then you said it. I'm going to game this as well. I'm going to say 80s.
60s, 1965.
Damn, it is a hippie sport. I should have guessed that.
Well, it was invented as a children's backyard game in the United States on Bainbridge Island in Washington State.
Wow.
In 2022, pickleball was named the official state sport of Washington. We'll call it a game because this is, games people play, not sports people play. It is a game. While it resembles tennis and table tennis, pickleball has separate rules, paddles, and court dimensions. I won't go into the details there. The hard plastic ball used produces less bounce than tennis balls. The rules specify side-out scoring, where only the server can score a point. The minimum amount of bounce, the non-volleying zones, and the underhanded stroke with which all serves are made give the game a dynamic pace. So if that doesn't want to make you try pickleball, I don't know what will.
Sounds cool.
So let's learn about our writer today, Kay George. She is an award-winning novelist and short story writer who writes cozies and traditional mysteries and a prehistory series, which are both traditionally and self-published. Her 2 cozy series are Fat Cat and Vintage Sweets. The 2 traditional series feature Cressa Caraway and Imogene Duckworthy. The People of the Wind Prehistory Mysteries takes place within the Neanderthal tribe. I wondered what prehistory meant. I don't think I've ever read a Neanderthal mystery. I have to pick that one up.
Like, is it Unga Bunga and Ugo Tuko?
Okay,
that might have been wrong. I regret saying that as well.
I don't know.
I'm not doing well. I'm going to mute myself.
She has a suspense novel coming out in 2025 called Someone Is Out There. About 50 or more short stories have also been published, mostly in anthologies and magazines. And hey, this one is going to show up in our anthology. It already is there in Games People Play Final Move, so check that out. With family scattered all over the globe, Kay makes her home in Knoxville, Tennessee. So that wraps up this episode of Mysteries to Die For. Support our show by subscribing or telling a mystery lover about us, giving us a 5-star review. Check out our website, which is under my name, tgwolff.com/podcast, for links to this season's authors. Mysteries to Die For is hosted by TG Wolff and Jack Wolff. In a Pickle was written by Kay George. Music and production are by Jack Wolff. Episode art is by TG Wolff. Join us next week for a Toe Tag, which is the first chapter in a fresh release from the mystery, crime, or thriller genre, and then come back in 2 weeks for our next original story in Season 8, Games People Play. All right, Jack, take us out.